Hey guys, we're going to analyze another patron game. This one is from two 1600 rated players. My patron was playing as white, and the question that they asked was, where did they go wrong in this game? They said they kind of felt like they played pretty well, tried to be aggressive, and it just kind of seemed like all of a sudden they had just lost, didn't really know where the game got away from them. And so we're going to talk about some of the subtle things that I noticed that I think really made a big difference in this game. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so here we go. D4, C4, knight C3, and E4. Okay, so this is great. Gets the center. It almost looks like a King's Indian, except instead of D6, black played C6. But okay. Takes E5. Check. Nothing really wrong with that. Trades. Queen A4. All right, so up until this point, everything was great. White was kind of just developing, controlling the center. Everything looked good. I don't like Queen A4. And part of the reason is, number one, white is not completely developed. I'd like to see castling. I'd like to see something happening with this bishop before you start going and doing too much with the queen. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is, if black just simply takes the knight here and ignores this, we talked about this in the last video, but allowing white to trade the queens actually is going to develop black's knight for them. So for example, takes, white has to trade queens now, because if you try to take back, you just actually lose your queen, right? So you have to trade queens. And now black gets that knight developed basically for free. And this is the other part of the problem here. This pawn is very, very, very bad for white. This is called a backward pawn because there's the half open file, it's blockaded, and all the pawns on either side of it that could help support it have been either captured or pushed forward. All right, and so backward pawn, very weak. And it's very easy for black to put the rook there, blockade it with the knight, and I could even envision eventually later in the game e6, and this bishop can come around and attack it some more. And basically, I'm pretty sure that black would be able to win this pawn, and then you just have an endgame where black has two pawns against one, and that's not what you want to do, right? And you didn't have to do that. White could have played something else. So I think this was kind of the first move where things started to get away from white a little bit. All right, so Queen A4. And here we have another queen move. I would probably like to see this developed, although I get that it's kind of like, where do you put the bishop? You probably don't want to go there. These squares, I think E3 is okay, so I probably would have wanted to see that. And actually, trading this knight or moving it probably would have made sense, because after this happens, again, we have the backward pawn. Right? So even here, I think queen takes is better, just because at least you avoid, excuse me, you avoid the backward pawn. And it's pretty equal. You're going to have to move the bishop, move your queen, put your rooks here. Everybody's going to be fighting for this open file, and the game goes on. But as soon as you do this, you kind of give black a nice little target, right? And this square is very weak, and it's very easy for black to put their knight there or their rook there, and I just feel like it makes black's life too easy, right? And sure enough, that's what black does. The knight comes there, the knight comes in, and notice how it's happening with tempo. So white's kind of wasting some time moving their queen around instead of getting their rooks better positioned or getting the bishop better positioned. And here we go. B5 is probably not the greatest move. I think just bringing the rooks over is what black needs to do. But all right, even B5 is not terrible. F4, F5. And here, white decided to try to attack black on the king side, which I'm all for attacking. I like to be aggressive. I like to attack. But one thing, and this is important, when you're planning to attack someone, you have to ask yourself the question, how many moves is it going to take me to get a nice attack going? And how easy or how difficult is it going to be for my opponent to stop my threat? Okay, so I want you to watch what happens. Rook F3. Okay, the knight going to c5 was a good move. We'll come back to that in just a second, but I want you to watch this kingside attack for a second. Rook h3, so we played one move, two moves, and I guess this was to get ready to bring this rook over, so that's the third move. But even if, like, let's say you played this, that'd be 3-4, and put your queen and your rook lined up, would it be easy or hard for black to defend that? It's pretty easy. They can just play h6 or even h5 and just completely shut down your battery. And you spent all this time, boom, boom, and now you're bringing this rook over. and it's really easy for black to stop, right? So the point that I was trying to make behind all of that talking there was right at this moment, I think white kind of misjudged what needed to happen, what the focus of the position was. So I think the focus of this position should have been, okay, I'm behind a little bit. I have this weakness. How can I deal with what's going on the queen side? Because there's just not really a good way to get through over here on the king side. There's just not. The way that the pawns are structured, it's just not a good way for white to attack, right? And so I think because of that, I would have focused more on the queen side. And they did a little bit, right? Like this was good. Knight b3, knight c5 was great because once you get your knight to c5, that really shuts down the rooks from attacking your pawn. So I really like this maneuver. And I think right here, instead of like rook h3, is when white should have said, okay, what can I do to kind of help out with things on the queen side? So maybe something like a4, or I don't know, maybe thinking about putting the bishop here to maybe go to like this. It's not that easy. And I don't have like an exact move that I would play, but I think I would do something over here on the queen side as opposed to this. So the game goes on, and you're going to see what happens. Now black is in the complete control of this game. They've got the second rank. They've got pressure here. This is pinned. And again, we have the problem of, yes, there's pieces over here. Yes, there's a pawn going forward, but there's not any real attack on the king, right? And it was a lot of moves to do this that could have been used over here to gain control of this file, to try, like I said, to play a4 and try to trade off some of these weak pawns. So yeah, I think that was really where it fell apart. And it might not seem like a big deal, but very, very quickly, the game is basically just over. Now that this pawn is here, and white has nothing to really do, right? And that's what happened. There's a queen. There's two queens. So tough game. I understand like what white was trying to do, but I think the big issue was just misjudging. And really, remember, going all the way back, all this mess kind of started when white decided to allow this backward pawn, right? So that was the big takeaway from this game. Don't give yourself weak pawns unless you have to. Sometimes things happen. There's a complicated tactic, and you've got to recapture a piece. And the only way to recapture it is, gives yourself a weakness. Sometimes that I get it. But in this case, white could have very easily recaptured this way, not giving themselves that weakness. So I think that's the key takeaway from this game. So hopefully you guys learned something from this game. And yeah, check out Patreon if you want to have your games analyzed just like this. All right, stay sharp, play smart, take care.